Daniel Ricciardo has been one of the most pleasant surprises in the 2023 season, and now that he's here to stay for the foreseeable future, it seems like AlphaTauri are in a very good position to fight in a much more competitive way than they used to do in the last couple of years. Ricciardo himself opened up about this, and although there are quite some eyebrows raised in the paddock about the relationship that the Italian squad has with Red Bull, Ricciardo's optimism has prevailed over the upcoming campaign. So with this in mind, could we see a massive power shift in the midfield? And even more importantly, is this the clutch point Ricciardo was waiting for in order to secure the Red Bull seat? It's safe to say that Ricciardo's mission was one of the toughest he could have possibly received, as he was headed in Alpha Tauri to revive the team, bring them back into the points contention, and then maybe, just maybe, be considered for the second seat in Red Bull alongside Max Verstappen. Ricciardo's success, though, was not based solely on his good performance, even though this, in combination with his experience and wants and needs from a car, definitely gave Alpha Tauri a massive push. The fact that the Italian squad started to borrow parts from Red Bull that are on the positive list without being penalised helped them a lot, with this process starting in Singapore and ending in Abu Dhabi. Now that AlphaTauri is set for a total rebrand in 2024 under a brand new name and a much closer collaboration with Red Bull, it seems like we're going to see a huge unrest in the midfield because of the fact that the parts that AlphaTauri plan on borrowing in a legal way are the ones that made Red Bull win 21 out of the 22 venues in the previous season. The rear suspension has raised some eyebrows in the paddock, and when it was mounted on Yuki Tsunoda's car in the last race in Abu Dhabi, it was definitely visible that the upgrade itself is going to make AlphaTauri a lot more competitive than what they were throughout the entirety of the 2023 season. Things have gotten to an extent where team bosses like Toto Wolff and Zak Brown started to raise some questions about the eligibility of this partnership, something that has the potential to remind us of the 2020 season and the pink Mercedes scandal, where Racing Point had practically bought every component they could from Mercedes and started to fight for podiums all of a sudden. Before we go to Ricciardo's verdict on AlphaTauri's season, let's see what Horner has to say about these claims that directly affect the reputation of Red Bull and its sister team. As the Brit went on to elaborate, we're an awfully long way from a pink Mercedes. There are some transferable components that are clearly listed with the regulations that you're allowed to supply, and that's what they get. When you look at the car, there are quite fundamental differences between that car and a Red Bull racing car, and arguably there are other cars on the grid which are far closer in concept than an AlphaTauri is. You've only got to look at an Aston Martin or even a McLaren. If you look around the rear suspension of a McLaren, it's very close in concept to that of our own. Be that as it may, the situation is very complicated because nobody knows what to expect from this potential partnership, as it has the potential to not only shake up the entire grid situation, but also make waves in the drivers' market as well. We must not forget the primary reason why Daniel Ricciardo is in the AlphaTauri seat, and that his final destination lies in the Austrian, not the Italian squad. So if he receives a car with which he could regularly fight with the upper field, including Perez, could this be the final straw for the Mexican's career in F1? Daniel is quite positive that the changes that his team is currently experiencing are definitely what they need in order to achieve what has been set as a goal since the second half of the 2023 season. Elaborating on this even further, the Honey Badger went on to say, "I feel a shift in the team. Even though I jumped in pretty much halfway through the season, I feel like they are wanting to break away a little bit from this kind of junior team and want to start showing themselves a little bit more. There's definitely an element of, I don't want to say taking this thing seriously, because of course they do, but just like, let's step it up, and there is obviously a few new people coming in next year. Of course, we cannot neglect the fact that people like Peter Bayer have taken over the team as the CEO, and with the arrival of Laurent Mekies, the former sporting director of Ferrari, as the team principal of AlphaTauri, the team will be headed in a brand new direction. But whether or not this direction will be solitary and they will use the help of Red Bull as a nudge, or whether they will be be fully moved by the Austrian squad in this time of dominance, time will tell. As for Ricciardo, he couldn't be happier with the treatment he's been receiving in the Italian squad, and his expectations are very high. Transfer the positive momentum in which his team went from being dead last to fighting for P7 in the last couple of races, as he went on to say, "Even over the past few weekends and getting some points from both Yuki and myself, it was like the team needed to give a bit of confidence and a bit of self-belief. I'm expecting that to carry over to next year, and hopefully we are fast. But we're not talking about a back-of-the-field team anymore. I'm confident we can push it forward." Even with the length of time I have been here, I do feel like some of the direction that I pushed in and what we were able to do in Mexico has given the team a little bit of, all right, we can keep pursuing this. And it is so fun to be looking forward. I am really in a good place, so my off season won't be too long because I've been off. So I'm looking forward to maybe having a little bit of time off, but training my butt off and starting the new season strong. Now, there are quite a few questions that need to be answered if the season for AlphaTauri turns out to be a massive one, such as the future of Daniel Ricciardo. What is currently happening is something of a dream scenario for the Aussie, not only because he'll be competitive and fight for points, but because he'll prove that he's the right driver to sit alongside Max Verstappen from 2025 onwards, possibly even somewhere in the 2024 season as well. Christian Horner has been very adamant that Checo's seat is only his to lose, and everything is in his hands. So if he's to remain with Red Bull from 2025 onwards, then he needs to have a season in which he won't be fighting for P2 in the last couple of races. But with the top teams edging closer and closer to Red Bull, as well as Horner saying that the Austrian team is looking at a downslope of performance, Perez will have an even harder time trying to catch up with Verstappen and, more importantly, keep the second place alive. Elaborating on this, Horner went on to say, "I think the luxury position we're in is that we're not in any rush. We've got loads of options, and I think it is Checo's seat to lose. He's the one that we're backing. He is our 2024 driver, and if he does a great job next year, there's no reason that we wouldn't extend him into 2025, but it would be purely based on what he achieves over what will be a large part of the season. I think that being Max's teammate is tough, and I think that you've got to have a certain resolve and character to be prepared to go up against Max. But as the field converges, it is inevitable that you want your two cars as close together as you can achieve. Checo is acutely aware that he's got to up his qualifying average so that he's not having to come from so far back. With this in mind, what do you think about the potential uprise in AlphaTauri? And more importantly, do you think it has the potential to massively shift the landscape of Formula One, with Ricciardo moving to Red Bull if all the pieces fall into place? Let us know what you think in the comments below.